Okay, welcome back. This is episode 5, I believe, of our Bridge broadcast. I'm David Higbee. I'm with a very special friend and guest, alum, and so many other different titles. I'm with Karla Garcia, who is a former Bridge player, Bridge graduate, but also currently the District 4 trustee for Dallas Independent School District. So, Karla, how are you doing?
I'm doing great this morning. Thank you.
I guess we'll start with, I hate that I've started every podcast this way with everyone who's been on here, but how are you doing in your self-quarantine time period?
It varies really. There's things I really enjoy about the things that I'm learning in this adaptation of things. And then there's things I think I took for granted about the way things were before. So it's a lot of learning. It's a lot of adapting, but hey, is that not sports too? So skill sets.
What's like the biggest change from your day to day?
The comfort of just where I get to work. So I get to be just as productive from the comfort of my own bedroom, from the kitchen, which is my favorite spot in any house. And again, just feeling a lot healthier with how I'm able to sort of own my schedule. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm controlling my time. I'm controlling where and how I do my work, and I'm still doing it. So that's a very positive thing.
Do you feel like that's maybe the same for the entire commit team?
I don't know.
Everyone's adjusting differently then?
Well, unlike the majority of my colleagues, I don't have children at home or a spouse. So right. I think they've got other priorities to take care of. But at least for me right now, there's a lot of things also that when we head back to the office, and I do miss my colleague and my work family, things that I'd like to take in to make sure that I'm staying sort of in the same mindset of taking care of myself. The self-care is a pretty big one.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of jump into what you're seeing as a trustee. So District 4 trustee, tell us a little bit about what you're hearing and seeing within your own district, but then also at a higher level, obviously the entire DISD district.
Yeah, that's a really sort of loaded question. It's one that has kept me up at night a few times. Just the scale, it's not just local. This is nationwide. This is global. In a district like mine, in District 4 here in Southeast Dallas, encompassing Pleasant Grove, Seagoville, and Balch Springs, we already started out as a community with limited resources. So a lot of the things that we're talking about students need to be successful in the classroom, students lack at home. Things like access to Wi-Fi, a computer at home, bandwidth. I mean, all of those different things are now, we've known about them before, but are now exacerbated under the need for students to be able to continue their learning at home. It hurts my heart to think that it's not just only 2020, but we are, as a school district, as a community, could have made this not be the reality where students are unprepared during a pandemic, a situation like this, to continue their learning at home. But I'm happy that we've responded collectively as the Board of Trustees with the purchase of mobile hotspots for students, along with providing resources for every post-secondary student, any student 6th through 12th grade, to make sure that they have that laptop at home. But this should have been taken care of a long time ago. And it was the plan for DISD in a prior long-term master plan. Mm-hmm. And this sort of just sped up things. So I'm hoping that moving forward, every single student needs to have those basic necessities at home, especially in a district like mine. Food is another big one. I mean, we have distribution centers all across the district, one here just down the road from me here at Florence Young Men's Leadership Academy. I was able to see it right before the board briefing this past Thursday, and it really tells you something when you see the long line of families. It's moms, it's dad, it's the entire family in a car, very excited to receive meals for the rest of the week. And I'm also just very glad that DISD is positioned to be able to provide those resources for families. But I cannot imagine a student going to bed hungry because they weren't able to get a meal at school, or the things that our school systems have provided for families are at play so intimately right now in a community like mine. And it really gives me a lot of food for thought, but also needing to take action at every level: the school board, the city council, the state, the country. We need to make sure that the basic necessities of every single child are taken care of, because those outcomes play out in the school system and we see them day to day.
Yeah, there's something about this event that really has spotlighted gaps in resources and gaps in opportunities that we all sort of knew existed, but they're all sort of boiling over in a way that I don't think any of us really expected. From a district perspective, I think we talk a lot about the capacity of the kids and what they have access to in the home, whether it's Wi-Fi hotspots, food access. What was the capacity for DISD in responding to this?
Well, I mean, one of the things that makes me really proud about our administration and our superintendent and my colleagues on the board is the action was swift, was quick. I mean, we were recently hit with the tornadoes back in October that took some of our schools in the situation of relocating students, resourcing them. We were able to do within 3 days, I believe it was, move students from one huge campus to another and set them back up for learning. We had to do the same thing with going home with the pandemic, but at district-wide level. So I think there was already a quick, swift response strategy that had already been in place from the tornadoes that was able to come into play here. But we weren't taking care of the needs from the home for the students that were displaced during the tornado. And at this point in time, we are. But I'm immensely proud. I mean, hashtag DISD proud. But DISD has a later spring break week. And that was the week where essentially we were aware of the rise in cases and this being a potential could close schools. So that entire week that our chiefs and our administration were supposed to have off essentially became, what are we going to do? The quintessential what if. And that then set us up for the announcement, we're going to extend a week or we're going to close for a certain number of days. That then became, we're going to close indefinitely, which has now become, we won't reopen for the remainder of the school year.
Right. It did seem like spring break helped in sort of creating that buffer of planning and execution of how do we respond and how do we provide for the kid in Dallas.
And another thing just to mention that I think really played into this was our community partners that really came and extended their hand quickly as they could. And it happened during the tornado where everybody rallied up around our students and made possible their transition. But at this point in time, and we had community organizations from all across the city that came and said, how can we help? How can we support those students and families continue their learning? So kudos to them and everything that they're doing for DISD.
Well, you all have done a great job. It's the response, at least from a lot of different people and organizations, has been pretty impressive, especially at the scale that we're all having to operate on now. You want to talk a little bit about just what kind of brought you to Lacrosse, what brought you to Bridge, and what maybe kind of kept you around?
Yeah, I'm remembering correctly. This was like 8th grade, and Laura had come into Rangel, and she had some flyers, and she was talking about Lacrosse. This was lunchtime. I was with Chantal and Gina and all my friends, and she comes up to us, I believe it was, and tells us about tryouts and all this other stuff. And Chantal was super excited about, we've never heard about this. We don't know what this is. We should try this. We should go. I think at that time it coincided with the soccer practice schedule too.
Right.
So it was we could go to soccer practice and then still make it in time for lacrosse practice or tryouts. And then I think it was just a matter of my three of my closest friends were very excited about it and they wanted to join. And this was just an opportunity for us to, because we did everything together outside of school, like get together for work, schoolwork and all that good stuff. It was just another way for us to extend the time period that we had together. Yeah. And the things that we did together. So it really naturally just became a way for us to have fun, get a nice workout in, and then get our families together. I mean, our families really rallied up around everything that we did. And this was just another avenue for them to do so. So I'm very grateful that I was in school that day, first of all, that we were all there together, that we took the flyer, and then we actually showed up.
Yeah, it's always easy to recruit at Rangel, but with all of the stuff that you all have going on and just how many different opportunities the school provides, keeping everyone playing and maintaining everyone's schedule is always kind of difficult. Where did Lacrosse fit into your high school ambitions and your high school and your plans for college and beyond?
So let me answer the first part of the question, which is what kept me in Lacrosse. It was honestly the family. It's the familia. It's the aspect of this is an activity that I enjoy, that I really have fun with. And also my best friends are here and my team is here. So there was always a feeling of I'm responsible to others. Others are responsible for me too. I mean, it's a very sort of strong, we're all in this together feeling that I really loved. And actually that's what took priority of lacrosse over soccer. And that's why we dedicated. And it wasn't just me, it was other teammates too, who stick with lacrosse. My parents also loved it. I mean, we got to go to different parts of the city that we would have never otherwise been able to travel to, that lacrosse exposed us to them. And there were tournaments, and then we started refereeing, and it was a lot of newness that was very exciting and very vibrant at the time. And I always had a lot of fun with it. So it was a family, and that's what a place to belong, a place to have fun, a place to win games, a place to lose games. I mean, it was just a fun overall experience. If there was a word I could put to it, it was fun.
Yeah.
How it played into, I suppose, college and career is, for one thing I knew is it's good to try new things. If I don't know something that's familiar to me, then you never know. It could be like a lacrosse thing and you end up enjoying it and having a lot of fun. So that was the first thing. The second is I was super excited because Carolina is a huge lacrosse school, men and women's, the whole region, big lacrosse history. And one of my favorite memories from Carolina was precisely heading out to the lacrosse games, talking to people, learning about the players, and then meeting them in the union and like saying, you don't know me, but can I get you a coffee? That 2014, 2016 women's championship was amazing. I mean, all these different things was a lot of fun. In lacrosse, even though I didn't play lacrosse at Carolina or even at the club or level, it was still an active part of just the way that I thought about myself as a Carolina student. We've got a great lacrosse team, and that makes me really proud.
Were you there when they won the men and women at the same time? It was like one of the few times that's ever happened where both male and female teams won the national championship?
Yes. I think it was either right before or after Maryland did.
What ultimately led you to UNC?
That's another story kind of like this, where I ran into opportunities like this and took them. But I'd never mentioned Carolina to you or anybody about things that I aspired to do after high school. I knew I wanted to go to college, but at the back of my mind was always the fear that I wouldn't be able to afford college. So my parents are hourly wage workers. I don't think it's ever been maybe more than 11 an hour. And you're talking about tuition costs, you're talking housing, you're talking meals, books, supplies. I mean, college is ridiculously expensive, but the burden of trying to finance a college education for a low-income family and a first-generation student is huge. I mean, I reflect back on how much those stressors played into how the urgency for me to find a safety net to guarantee that I could go to college. Lacrosse really helped a lot. I applied for student athlete scholarships and was awarded the Nancy Lieberman here in Dallas. And that was a 10K scholarship that really helped me out. But how UNC came was I had a list of the only way that I thought I could afford to go to college was if I went to the military. And so I'm not sure if you remember, but I participated in the summer programs at the Naval Academy, the Coast Guard Academy.
I do remember that, yeah.
And I learned a lot there. It was fun. I realized that maybe 8 years of service wasn't necessarily something that I intended to do. Mm-hmm. But I generally wished to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, but also realized I as a first generation student, I really wanted that American college experience.
Yeah.
So I applied to schools like SMU and A&M, and I was admitted and was getting excited about those options, thinking that if I joined ROTC at A&M, that was another way for me to have a college experience, but also have my school paid for, essentially. Limited by what will pay for school.
Yeah. And
to study, I believe, mechanical engineering, when I love math and science and engineering, but it doesn't get me as passionate as policy does these days.
Yeah.
So Ms. Marano, our college band advisor, who I'm very grateful, because we were such a small class and we'd been together for so long, knew me so well as to say, I don't know if this is something that's the best option for you. Here's a list of schools that I think you should consider. But this was pretty late. Must have been January of senior year. By then, most schools have already closed their priority deadlines and scholarship deadlines and all that good stuff. So I was pretty late in the game looking at a list of schools that I'd never even considered. The list included schools like Duke, UNC, Syracuse, USC, Fordham, and a few other schools that A, I had never even heard of, or B, just never thought I had the academic caliber to even consider being admitted to. And I don't know why it was in that list of 10, 15 schools. The only one that really, truly caught my attention was Carolina. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think it was the color. I don't know what it was. I also think some of the other schools' deadlines had passed. If I'm not mistaken, I think Duke had already passed, Syracuse had passed, things like that. So Carolina was still open. I applied, didn't pay much attention to it, thinking there's no way I'm admitting and getting admitted to this university. I go to the website, I take a look at the cost of attendance, and absolutely no, that cost of attendance for 1 year at Carolina is higher than my household income.
Yeah.
So that was already, I just wanted to make Miss Moreno happy. I apply. About a month later, we're at the movies watching the Cesar Chavez biopic. And I tell my friends, I got an email notification. Y'all, look, I'm about to get rejected at Carolina. I show Chantal, it was Chantal and Gina, actually. This is funny. It was Chantal and Gina. And I showed them the phone screen, and I'd been admitted, which is one thing to get admitted. The other is financing.
Certainly.
And so, like a lot of students in my position, we go desperate in trying to find financing opportunities for college. That doesn't include loans.
Yeah.
I was scared to death of putting my family or myself in burden of debt trying to get a higher education. And that's what keeps a lot of people from pursuing the opportunity, even though it's something that they truly want. And it's something that I'm very grateful to be able to do with my work now with the Dallas County Promise. But anyways, I went bonkers and applied to 98 scholarships senior year. That's what kept my senior year so ridiculously busy. I was also refereeing on the weekends.
That's right.
For tournaments and stuff. And I'm deviating here, but the savings that I had from refereeing for lacrosse bought me my first car. And it's the 98
Really?
Nissan Sentra. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it's the oldest, raggediest little car that I think had 4 owners prior to me, but it was my car and I bought it with my lacrosse money.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I think I got it for like $1,200.
I knew you were killing it on the weekends, refereeing tournaments and games all over the place, but I didn't realize you had enough. You were doing it enough to buy your own car. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it was also a $1,200 little car, so it wasn't very expensive, but it took me places, and I'm really happy about that. And
That's
then my brother had it for a little while, and the families used it. It's gone now, but anyways, thank you to Lacrosse for that opportunity. So going back to Carolina. So anyways, I was very grateful to receive enough scholarships to cover the gap between my cost of attendance, my financial aid at Carolina, financial aid from Pell Grant, and then my scholarships kicked in to essentially fully cover my entire cost of attendance for those 4 years at Carolina. I don't know how often it happens, but the fact that I was able to finance a nearly $250,000 education without a single penny coming out of my pocket or my parents is just about the biggest blessing that I can attribute to it in education for me. Now I get to do work on behalf of ensuring that experience happens for a lot more students.
Bridge has morphed in a lot of ways or evolved in a lot of ways to help address some of these other needs off the field. A lot of the conversations we have around what those needs are really have stemmed from what you've done. And so we talk to our seniors, especially about, hey, here's a list of scholarships. Here's the things you need to be pursuing. And we put together our own scholarship. And a lot of those conversations really started with you. I mean, I remember writing, at least 10, 12 reference letters, recommendations for you. And you put so much work into that. You were kind of that go-to example of, hey, this is what it takes to get to meet some of your goals. And so when we talk about this evolution of Bridge, you are a big part of that genesis of how we're talking to our kids about school, about college opportunities, scholarships, pursuing schools that maybe are a little outside of your realm. And, Miss Morano has been incredibly helpful in providing us resources. I mean, she's a legend in terms of this sort of industry or this outlet for a lot of kids. So you really helped us kind of package what we want to do for kids outside of just playing lacrosse.
And I appreciate the love, but I have to give kudos to the people that I had around me. If it weren't Miss Morano starting out with, I know you well enough to know that this may be limiting you. Here's a list of schools, right? It all started with, here's a list of schools, pick one and do this for me. To then, my teammates and you and coach and the reaching out to the other seniors. And it was a really overwhelming time. I mean, I remember I was heck busy, tired, exhausted. I remember coming to some games and thinking like, I cannot possibly make it to halftime. Right. I'm this tired, but it was that sort of push yourself, show up, be responsible, set priorities, all these little things in senior year that really prepped me for what that college schedule and that college experience and transition would look like. But if it weren't for the caring and responsible and trusting adults around me, I mean, there's no way I could have gotten through not just senior year, but that transition and then ultimately college graduation.
Let's kind of morph into your day job with Commit and Dallas County Promise. Do you want to do a quick overview of what Dallas County Promise is and then what your role is?
Yeah. So Dallas County Promise is an initiative that started in 2017, whereby high school seniors graduating from participating high schools have access to a last dollar tuition scholarship, and I'll explain that a little further, to take to participating Promise partner colleges and universities, and they could essentially earn an associate's degree up to a bachelor's degree without ever having to pay a cent for their tuition. Mm-hmm. And the way it works is a student applies their senior year for financial aid, FAFSA or TASFA, and whatever doesn't cover their cost of tuition after that financial aid is covered by the Dallas County Promise last dollar tuition scholarship. It's a really exciting opportunity that has already showed and showcased to our team and I think the broader higher ed and school districts just how much work there is to do in college access and readiness for students. But a work that I'm excited is shaping and modeling a lot of processes in higher ed, like enrollment, registration, orientation, the things that we require students to be prepared to enroll for college, meningitis shots, TSI. Everything is changing as the landscape of higher ed changes. And I'm excited to be a part of the college access and readiness team. We directly support those high school seniors in that entire transition. So I get to work each and every single day with students just like me, from families just like mine, with the same questions, with the same doubts, the same fears, and help them into that next step. And that gives me so much purpose, so much joy. This year, we're at 57 high schools. That's roughly 22,000 students. In Texas, in next year, having a financial aid application on file will be a requirement for high school graduation. So there's a lot of work to do, but I'm excited to be part of a team that's piloting so many different technologies to make this a reality for not just the student like me or the students like me who were privileged enough and blessed enough to be on a campus with the adults and the resources to help us make those dreams a reality, but for every single student, regardless of where they are in the city of Dallas.
That's really wonderful. You're such a perfect fit for this outlet for a lot of other kids, right? We talk a lot about representation within the sport, knowing the demographics, knowing kind of our mission. Your professional career is a lot like that too. I've been through this journey. We share similar backgrounds. We share similar experiences. Here's the process I went through. Here's the journey I took. To some degree, here's, you can sort of hand over the playbook in a lot of ways or hand over templates. Are the questions that you had X number of years ago, are those pretty similar to the questions that you're getting now from students? Or are there new things coming up that you're having to adjust to or answer differently than maybe when you were going through the process of applying for schools and making that transition?
Well, where it differs for a lot of our students is I went to a dedicated magnet program in Dallas ISD with very intentional adults that college and career was what we were being prepared for. Mm-hmm. That unfortunately is not the case across the city of Dallas or Dallas County as a whole. And we have a lot of students who are starting out ninth grade, freshmen in high school, who have already shut down the idea that they can A, go to college, or B, have a professional career. And we grew up in neighborhoods where we don't have attorneys, doctors, bachelor degrees, professional degrees in our families or in the community. So it's almost impossible for us to aspire to something we've never seen. When we do have those ideas or those aspirations, the cost of tuition, the cost of attendance for 1 year of obtaining this credential becomes that next barrier that immediately shuts us down. So I was, again, very grateful and very blessed to be at Rangel, but the students we're working with now are starting out with the same concerns. Can I even afford to take an opportunity like this? And fundamentally, if you really think about it, how cruel is it that a student that wants to continue in education is unable to because they cannot afford it? It's ridiculous. I'm excited that the promise is helping higher ed institutions think about how we can support more students who have said and raised their hands in high school and said, I want to go on to college. My family is barely making it, but I'm ready. I've taken the last 12 years of my life to get ready for this. And I want to and aspire to have a credential to enable me to have a good career, a good paying job. And it's been generations and generations of failed students in this whole system, but an entire group of adults and other organizations are continuously working at it. I mean, I consider myself a product of those initiatives and the things that have worked. So it gets me really rattled up to think about these things.
Is the whole of providing access to lower income and under-resourced students, is the landscape changing? Is it getting better overall, or is it still sort of siloed efforts here and there? Is there a broader effort or broader change happening?
This question strikes me a lot because I think sometimes we're so used to asking students or families to adapt and change themselves when in fact the system should be changing, right? Mm-hmm. There's something I shared during the campaign trail. Let me see if I remember what it was, but we shouldn't be asking students to overcome the odds. We should be changing those odds. Right. So what it really takes is us changing the way that the system works for students. And there's so many different things that work against students and families that we wouldn't bother to think about because, we've either never been in that situation or simple little things that can keep a student who is ready to go from accessing. And I think it's time for institutions to change how they operate, who they operate for, why they operate, and serve students first and think about student and family friendly ways, because when you're low income and first generation, the world is stacked against you when it comes to access and higher ed.
Those lessons of kind of what the system looks like are really interesting. And that's not an experience I have personally, but having conversations with you and having conversations with other alum who've come back and, had coffee or a quick phone call or even just a text message conversation, learning those little things that are barriers or things that sort of stack up against first generation kids. The scholarship that we put together for Bridge and Outgoing Bridge Senior last year was only $1,000. Yeah, granted in a, if your tuition's $50K or whatever is a drop in the bucket, but it does help. And there are little things like that. The way someone put it to me, it was kind of death by paper cuts, is that first gen kids, there's not one encompassing event that pushes them out the door, pushes them away from school. It's all these little things over time that are just, I can't do this anymore. And that this, for us, the scholarship was, can we help mitigate some of that death by paper cuts?
Yeah. And the thing about scholarships too, that's really affirming, and it was for me immediately after high school, was scholarships essentially let you know you are worthy of our investment and we support you. And here is something for you to continue on that journey. It's like it really can become sort of a lifeboat situation. Your books for the semester, that gap in tuition. I mean, that kind of stuff, and even much smaller amounts than $1,000 are what keep our students from transitioning in higher ed from grade to grade to grade. And it's ridiculous. And there's so much more work to do. But with the scholarships that I was able to obtain, it was a constant for me wanting to make sure that I did well for those scholarship providers. So that motivation to keep my grades up, to stay in school, to know that there was a community behind me in Dallas, and the scholarships came from all across the country, but that there were people willing to invest in me, and I need to be able to give back and do well for them.
We talked about this yesterday the other day with some of our high school kids about becoming alumni and wanting to give back and, supporting the people that supported me when I'm to a certain position. I do love that aspect of, coming back to your roots or coming back and kind of being a part of what built you. Is that something for you, coming back to DISD, that was obviously a big factor for you and running for trustee, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
What were some of the other factors though too? Because I mean, you came in, right out of college. You're the youngest trustee ever elected.
And the first Latina. So there's two first.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what were some of the other factors in making a run like that? Because that was at the time pretty unprecedented.
So I guess I'll go back into what Carolina was and then what it was for me right after high school. But again, I'm a first generation low income college graduate, and Carolina was not easy. I cried every single day at Carolina, and that was because I'm adjusting to my world essentially flipped upside down. I mean, I had the connections of a small core group of friends, the family that was my high school senior class, 49 seniors. I knew every single adult in that building. I don't know if I knew all the students, but I saw them every day. So it was a very routine, trusting schedule for me each and every single day. People pushed me, had very high expectations. on the field, off the field, everywhere at home. That went up in the air when I got to Carolina, and I'm here by myself in a state, in a place, in a community where I don't know a soul, where the demographics are completely the opposite of where they were growing up at home. I mean, you take me from Pleasant Grove, Southeast Dallas, Texas, to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it's a completely different world for me.
Right.
But I was used to, I guess lacrosse was really the first time that I ventured out to different neighborhoods and saw how different things were in my neighborhood to others. And I will tell you, one of the reasons I was so excited to go into public policy was because I wanted to understand, why does my neighborhood look so fundamentally different than the other neighborhoods? And neighborhoods that we got to go through and play through with lacrosse. Lacrosse took me there. Lacrosse exposed me to that, exposed me to different groups of peers in a sportsmanship and a lot of different communities. And I was able to, once I got to Carolina, every single day was just learning to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, whether it was because my peers didn't look like me in the classroom, because they didn't come from backgrounds like mine, because we couldn't talk and have the same conversations. But it was a lot of adjusting. And ultimately, it took a lot of grit, a lot of support, a lot of love to get through the 4 years and graduate with honors. And I was able to go abroad. I was in DC for 6 months at the Department of Education, and I was in London with a social investment firm. I mean, I got to do so many things that people in my community can only really dream of. When they hear it from me, they'll chuckle because they're like, wow, that's amazing. Are you dreaming, kind of thing? But I came back with that first bachelor's degree in this family, one of the few in this community from Carolina. And I had the opportunity to intern with Commit with the College Access and Success team back when it was a director and an intern. And that was in 2016, I believe, as a sophomore. When the Dallas County Promise came around and I was about to graduate, I learned about the initiative and decided that's what I want to do to support having more students that look like me from my background in the classrooms where I went to school. I was the only Latina in the majority of my classrooms. And I would reckon from my background at Carolina, they have a very great initiative in supporting more first generation students and low income students, but there are a lot of very smart students who could have been in the college classroom that didn't have the opportunity. And this was a perfect way with the Dallas County Promise to be able to ensure that we continued that work. Anyways, I found out that my current trustee, Jaime Resendez, was not seeking re-election and was running for city council. So the seat was open, essentially. And I had community members that came up to me and said, you know, Karla, Jaime's not running. Do you? And my first question was always, why me? Why would you ever think that at 22, no money, straight out of college, that I'd ever be ready to embark on something as big as running for public office? And the weight of school boards and the importance of school boards, how hyper local focused that work and impact is, I don't take for granted. And it's something that I knew was going to be big. People came up to me and they asked me, and I had to change that question from why me to why not me? Like, why not be the closest face to a DISD student and graduate as can be? And I went for it. And it took 2 months of sorting through my sheets at night to decide that this is something that I was ready for, B, could do better than the people on the ballot, and third, that I would be able to carry out successfully with the people around me. So I went for it in November of 2019. Seems like really long ago. It wasn't even. And then, no, 2018, November 2018, launched in February of 2019. And then it was those longest months of my life.
I'm sure.
Until victory.
It was really fun to watch and be able to just sort of see that journey and see that path. It was something, because we had talked prior to you running, and we had talked about, hey, do you want to come back and coach for Bridge? Because we're adding in their team. And so I remember we were talking about how you were going to maybe try to make time to come back and coach and volunteer. And then I think it was sometime in December, you're like, hey, I've been asked to maybe run for District 4. So I think I'm going to do it. And I may not have much time for coaching. So if you don't mind, I may need to bow out of that. There are a ton of reasons you should not want to coach little kid lacrosse. Running for DISD trustee is a pretty good reason.
Mm-hmm. And I was just thinking, I mean, this is perfect lacrosse weather right now in April and stuff. But there's one thing that I know on beautiful days that upsets me when I'm at home or in the office spaces, my first thought is always, this is perfect lacrosse weather.
Yep.
I'd much rather be out there throwing around with Chantal and Gina and a lot of different people, but here we are.
I think I saw a Twitter post of yours with the lacrosse sticks out.
I did. So DISD's check-in challenge every Thursday, post a picture of you doing something fun, creative, engaging, and beautiful weather. Take out the lacrosse sticks. It's so safe social distancing. You don't have to get too close. In fact,
Absolutely.
The further we are, the better. We can practice those passes, and that's what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a sort of a favorite memory of bridge that stands out to you, or something from your bridge lacrosse history that stands out as a pretty significant moment or favorite moment?
Yeah, encompassing, I guess, overall encompassing. But when we talk about the factors that support student success in our district, enriching opportunities for students, I always think about the impact that lacrosse had for me as a student athlete. I talked about family is what kept me in the sport, gave me a sense of belonging. I was running around everywhere, much better shape. Oh my gosh, than I am now.
That's just part of adulthood.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I really need to get back on a lacrosse team, run around like that again. The supportive adults around me that pushed me, that had higher expectations, not just in the sport, but on and off the field. And then it was truly an enriching experience that exposed me to so much. And when I talk about enriching experiences for students to support their success, I think about opportunities across and what we can do to expand those experiences for students, regardless of their zip code, their family income, what they enjoy with, and things like that. So when I say lacrosse shaped a lot of, or bridge lacrosse shaped a lot of who I am, I think it's because it gave me an avenue to explore who I was as a student and as a person that had no metrics to it, in the sense of there wasn't a grade attached to it. It was a fun way to come to be in a safe setting with good people around me, having a lot of fun. And it then became and led to what I wanted to study in college, and a lot of the work that I'm doing now, but it's in service of students. And I want more students to have opportunities like the one I did through Bridge Lacrosse.
You talked about that focus on policy when you got to UNC. I still have that text message screenshotted on my phone of the text message you sent me. I don't know how long ago, of this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because when we would travel, I saw sort of the disparity, or saw what my neighborhood or community lacked versus what these other communities have, and that has inspired me, and that has motivated me to change that. That is a text message or a screenshot that I carry with me, and it means a lot to me. So Karla, this was a ton of fun.
And then let's running for office, and then
absolutely.
It's all come here.
Karla, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate just, the insight. I appreciate you sharing your experience and your story. So maybe heavier than you wanted for a Tuesday morning, but I do appreciate it.
Oh, I love talking about what motivates me. I love talking about work that we've yet to do in Dallas. So I'm all for it.
You've done a great job. I know you've got a lot more on your plate, and obviously in this very strange time of this pandemic, I'm sure you're just as busy as ever. So stay safe. Thanks again. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you. Have a good one.
All right.